There's a moment in life when you realize something that breaks you, something you never expected to happen. It's that moment when someone you cared about, someone who once held your heart in their hands, suddenly stops seeing your worth. They stop valuing you. And that hurt, it cuts deeper than any wound, because it's not just rejection, it's betrayal. It's the feeling of being invisible, like you never mattered. But let me tell you something, you do matter. There's a powerful truth in life that many of us learned the hard way. Stop chasing validation from those who don't see your worth. We've all been there trying to prove ourselves to someone who just doesn't get it. Someone who doesn't recognize what you bring to the table. Whether it's in relationships, friendships, or even at work, it's so easy to fall into the trap of thinking that if you just try harder, do more, change yourself, they'll finally see your value. But here's the painful reality, they won't end. The harder you try to prove yourself to them, the more you lose sight of what truly matters, your own sense of worth. When someone doesn't see your value, it doesn't mean you're not valuable. It means they're not capable of seeing your worth. People get caught up in their own world with their own issues, and sometimes they just can't recognize the treasure standing right in front of them. Maybe they're too distracted, too selfish, or too broken themselves to appreciate what you offer. Whatever the reason, it's not your job to make them see it. The truth is, you can't force someone to value you. You can't force someone to love you, respect you, or treat you the way you deserve to be treated. But here's what you can do. You can stop chasing after their approval. It's one of the most difficult things to do, but it's also one of the most liberating. The moment you stop seeking validation from people who can't see your worth is the moment you start to take back your power. Think about it. Every time you seek someone else's approval, you give them control over how you feel about yourself. You're letting their opinion define your self-worth. And when you let someone define your value, you're giving them the power to make you feel small, to make you feel like you're not enough. But when you stop chasing their validation, when you stop bending over backward to meet their expectations, you regain that power. You no longer let their inability to see you for who you truly are affect your belief in yourself. It's not easy, though. It feels unnatural at first because we're conditioned to seek approval, to want to be liked, to want to feel accepted. But here's where the shift happens. You have to realize that your worth does not come from outside of you. It comes from within. People may not always recognize your value, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's already there, inside you, waiting to be acknowledged, but you have to be the one to see it first. You have to value yourself before anyone else will. Think about all the times you've bent over backward for someone only to be met with indifference or even rejection. The problem wasn't with you. The problem was that you were seeking validation from the wrong source. When you stop chasing validation, you free yourself from the constant cycle of disappointment and self-doubt. You stop waiting for others to tell you what you're worth, and instead you start to believe it for yourself. You realize that their inability to appreciate you doesn't diminish your value. In fact, it only highlights the fact that you don't need anyone's approval to know how incredible you are. This doesn't mean you stop caring about the people you love or the relationships you cherish. It doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you stop placing your happiness, your self-worth, and your emotional well-being in the hands of others. It means you stop letting someone else's opinion of you define how you feel about yourself. You learn to build your own sense of self-worth, independent of external validation. And as difficult as it is, the more you practice this, the easier it becomes. When you stop chasing validation from those who can or won't see your value, you start to attract the people who will. The people who will appreciate you for exactly who you are. The people who will see you and recognize your worth without you having to beg for it. They'll be the ones who support you, uplift you, and value you for everything you bring to the table. But you can't attract these people until you stop seeking approval from those who don't deserve it. You have to first believe that you're worthy of their love and respect. It's a process, yes. It won't happen overnight. But the moment you decide to stop chasing validation from those who don't see your worth, you'll begin to see the world differently. You'll begin to see that you are enough, exactly as you are. And once you start believing that, the people who truly value you will start showing up. They'll be the ones who see the real you, the authentic you, the person who never needed to beg for their approval in the first place. Your value is not defined by others' perception of you. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn, especially in a world that constantly tells you to fit in, to be accepted, and to conform to what others think you should be. From the moment we're born, we're taught to seek approval, As children, we want our parents' approval. Then, as we grow older, we seek validation from friends, teachers, colleagues, and eventually society at large. We're conditioned to believe that our worth is something that others get to decide. But the truth is, the worth that you hold has nothing to do with how others see you. It's all about how you see yourself. This might sound like an abstract idea, something that's easier said than done. But it's the foundation of self-respect, self-love, and ultimately self-empowerment. If you rely on others to determine your value, you'll always be at the mercy of their opinions, which are constantly changing. One day they might see you as invaluable, and the next day they might forget you even exist. If you tie your worth to their view of you, you're setting yourself up for a life of constant emotional turmoil, always fluctuating between highs when they praise you and lows when they ignore or criticize you. Your self-worth cannot be based on anyone else's opinion, because people's opinions of you are often more a reflection of them than they are of you. We see this all the time in relationships, whether they're romantic, platonic, or professional. When someone treats you poorly, it's easy to internalize their actions and assume that you deserve it, that there's something wrong with you. But the truth is, how someone else treats you says nothing about your worth and everything about their character. When someone fails to recognize your value, it doesn't diminish who you are. It only shows that they're incapable of appreciating what you have to offer. And in those moments, it's important to remind yourself that your worth does not depend on their ability to see it. Think about all the times in your life when someone's opinion of you hurt you. Maybe someone you cared about rejected you, criticized you, or ignored you. It stung, didn't it? It felt like a punch in the gut. Because deep down, we've all been taught to tie our self-worth to how others treat us. But if we're being honest, we know that these actions reflect the other person, not us. When someone disrespects you, it's not because you're worthless. It's because they can't see the value in you, and that's their limitation, not yours. This is where the shift happens. Once you understand that your worth is not defined by how others perceive you, you start to see yourself differently. You begin to realize that your value is intrinsic. It's part of who you are, regardless of what anyone else says, does, or thinks. Your value is in your heart, in your mind, in your actions, and in your essence. It has nothing to do with meeting the standards or expectations of others. It has everything to do with being true to yourself. Imagine if you woke up every day knowing that no one else could dictate your worth. No matter how they treated you, no matter what they said, you could walk into any room with your head held high because you knew deep down that you were enough just as you are. You wouldn't need anyone's approval to feel good about yourself. This is the power of understanding that your value is something you define for yourself. It is rooted in your self-awareness, your strengths, your growth, and your ability to love and respect yourself. No one can take that from you unless you give it to them. This is where the real freedom lies, not in seeking validation or approval, but in releasing the need for it altogether. When you stop looking for external validation, you no longer depend on someone else to make you feel whole. You are whole already. You're not incomplete without someone else's approval. You're not any less valuable because someone else can't see your worth. In fact, your self-worth grows stronger the more you let go of the need for others to define it. You stop giving away your power and you take control over how you see yourself. When you begin to define your own value, you start to make different choices. You start to surround yourself with people who recognize your worth, not because they're perfect, but because they appreciate you for who you are. You stop settling for relationships that drain you because you know you deserve better. You stop tolerating disrespect because you understand that you're worthy of kindness, care, and appreciation. You start to live authentically, knowing that you don't need anyone else to validate your existence. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey, one that takes time and patience. But once you realize that your value is not dependent on others' perceptions, you'll notice how your entire life changes. You'll stop seeking external validation and you'll start walking in your own power. And as you do that, the right people will come into your life, the ones who see you, the ones who appreciate you, and the ones who will treat you with the respect and love you've always deserved. But until you believe in your own worth, you won't be able to recognize these people. The moment you start to see your value for what it truly is, the world around you will begin to reflect that truth back to you. People often think that the answer to feeling valued lies in giving more of yourself to others. But the truth is, you cannot pour from an empty cup. It's one of the most important realizations you can have in life, especially if you've ever found yourself constantly giving to others while feeling emotionally drained. unappreciated, or even resentful. You can't be the best version of yourself for anyone else if you're not taking the time to fill your own cup first. The idea that you should always give, always serve, always put others first may sound noble, but it's ultimately unsustainable if you're not also taking care of your own needs. If you're someone who's always the caretaker, the listener, the one who steps in to help when no one else will, it can be hard to admit that you need to take a step back for yourself. But the truth is, you need to be there for yourself before you can fully show up for others. If you're constantly running on empty, trying to fill everyone else's cups, eventually you'll find yourself exhausted and resentful, wondering why you're not receiving the same care and attention in return. And it's not because people don't appreciate you. It's because you've given so much of yourself away, there's nothing left to give. You can't expect others to pour into you when you haven't taken the time to fill yourself up first. Think about a time when you felt emotionally drained, whether it was from a relationship, a job, or a friendship. You gave so much of yourself, but somehow, the more you gave, the less you had to give. The harder you worked to make others happy, the emptier you felt inside. That's because you were pouring from an empty cup. When you're constantly giving to others without replenishing your own energy, you begin to feel depleted, like a shell of who you really are. You lose sight of your own needs, your own desires, and your own well-being. And the worst part is when you're running on empty, you can't even give your best. You're just going through the motions, trying to meet expectations, but you're not showing up as the best version of yourself because you've neglected to care for your own soul. The key to breaking this cycle is learning how to fill your cup first. This doesn't mean being selfish, it means being wise. It means recognizing that in order to give to others, you need to take care of yourself first. It's like the safety instructions on an airplane: put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. If you don't have the strength, the energy, or the emotional capacity to take care of yourself, how can you expect to take care of anyone else? The more you fill your own cup with love, peace, and strength, the more you'll have to give. And the best part is, when you're filled up, giving doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It becomes something you do because you have the capacity to give, not because you're drained and feel like you have no choice. Taking the time to fill your cup isn't just about rest or relaxation, it's about emotional and mental nourishment. It's about doing things that refill your spirit, that remind you of who you are and why you matter. It's the small acts of self-care, the moments when you take time to recharge, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. This could mean setting boundaries, saying no when you need to, and creating space for yourself to just be. It could be taking a walk, journaling, spending time with people who lift you up, or simply sitting in silence and doing nothing. Whatever it is, you need to make it a priority to fill your cup, because when you do, you become stronger, more resilient, and more capable of giving to others from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. Think about it this way: when your cup is full, you no longer need to seek validation or approval from others. You're already satisfied with who you are and what you bring to the table. You don't need someone else's recognition to feel good about yourself, because you know you are enough. And when you're full, you can pour into others without depleting yourself. You give from a place of strength, not of desperation. And when you give from that place, it's powerful. It's genuine. It's something that doesn't drain you, but actually energizes you, because it comes from a place of self-love and self-respect. It's also important to recognize that filling your cup doesn't mean avoiding the tough stuff or ignoring your responsibilities. It means recognizing that you can't be the best version of yourself if you're constantly running on empty. It means that in order to serve others, to help them, to love them, you first need to serve yourself, help yourself, and love yourself. When you take care of your own needs, you're better able to serve those around you. You can show up fully for them because you're not pouring from an empty vessel. Too often we think that taking care of ourselves is selfish, but the truth is it's necessary. It's necessary not just for our well-being, but for the well-being of everyone around us. Because when we fill our cup, we have so much more to give, and that gives us the energy and the colostrum to show up as the best version of ourselves, not just for us, but for the people we care about most. When you stop seeking validation from people who can't see your worth, you'll begin to see the world differently. It's one of the most empowering shifts you can make in your life. We often get so caught up in trying to gain approval from those who don't recognize our value that we lose sight of the fact that the right people will always find their way to us, but only once we stop chasing after the wrong ones. The act of seeking validation from those who don't value us is draining, and over time it chips away at our self-worth. The moment you stop seeking it, you'll realize that you've been holding on to the wrong connections, waiting for someone to show you love, respect, or appreciation. But when you stop chasing, when you let go, something beautiful happens. Those who truly recognize your worth will show up. Too often, we're conditioned to believe that if we just work harder, change ourselves, or prove that we're worthy of someone's time or attention, then we'll finally get the recognition we desire. We may keep giving, keep doing, keep showing up, hoping that eventually they'll see us for who we truly are. But what we fail to realize is that if someone hasn't valued us already, it's unlikely they will. And even if they do, it often comes with strings attached, with expectations that leave us feeling empty instead of appreciated. The truth is, you cannot force someone to see your worth. People either see it or they don't. And that's not your responsibility to change. When you stop seeking validation from those who can't see your value, you start valuing yourself. You begin to understand that the approval you're craving can only truly come from within. The need to seek validation starts to dissipate because you recognize that you are enough regardless of anyone else's opinion of you. You no longer look to others to confirm your worth. You start validating yourself. You realize that your value isn't dependent on someone else's recognition, but on the intrinsic qualities that make you who you are. And once you realize that, you begin to move differently in the world. You stop seeking, you stop chasing, and you stop worrying about whether or not someone notices you or appreciates you. You know that those who are meant to be in your life will recognize your worth naturally, without you naturally. And when the right people show up, you'll realize how different it feels. These people don't need to be convinced of your worth. They see it immediately. They're not waiting for you to bend over backward or constantly show up to earn their love or respect. They already recognize that you're a valuable person, and they don't take that for granted. There's no manipulation, no games, no pretending to be something you're not. The right people love you for who you are, not for who you try to be or how much you can prove yourself to them. These are the people who will support you, stand by you, and love you without hesitation. And the key to attracting these people is to stop seeking validation from those who don't see your worth in the first place. It's a hard lesson to learn, and it often requires us to let go of relationships or situations that we've invested so much time, energy, and emotion into. But once you stop chasing after the wrong people, once you stop looking for validation in places where it will never come, you make room for the right people. The ones who will appreciate you for the person you are today without needing to change a thing. And here's the beauty of it. When you stop chasing validation, you begin to live for yourself. You begin to make choices based on what's best for you, not what others expect from you. You stop pretending, stop trying to fit into molds that were never made for you, and you start living authentically. The more you stop seeking validation from others, the more you realize that your value isn't tied to any one person's opinion. It's tied to who you are at your core. You don't need anyone else's approval to know that you're worthy of love, respect, and success. And when you stop seeking that validation, the people who truly matter, who truly see you, will naturally be drawn to you. You'll attract those who appreciate you, not for what you can do for them, but for who you are. And when that happens, you begin to see that the universe has a way of realigning your life in ways that are so much more fulfilling. The right opportunities will present themselves, the right relationships will form, and you'll begin to feel a sense of peace and fulfillment that you never had when you were constantly chasing validation from the wrong people. You realize that your energy is precious, and when you stop wasting it on those who don't see you for what you truly are, you start investing it in people and experiences that lift you up, encourage you, and remind you of your true value. So stop chasing the validation that isn't coming. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who will never see your worth. When you let go of that need, you'll find that the right people will show up effortlessly. They will see you, they will recognize you, and they will value you. And once that happens, you'll understand that the pursuit of validation was never the key. The key was always within you, waiting for you to recognize your own worth first. And once you do, everything will fall into place. The power of setting boundaries is one of the most crucial things you can learn in life. If you allow people to take advantage of your time, your energy, and your kindness, you're essentially giving them permission to drain you, to manipulate you, and control your emotions. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They are the foundation of a healthy, respectful relationship with yourself and others. They are a clear statement that you recognize your own worth, and that you refuse to allow anyone to treat you in a way that doesn't align with your values. Learning to set boundaries is difficult because we are often taught that we must always be accommodating, always be available, always say yes. From a young age, we're told that being nice, being a people pleaser, is the way to build connections and maintain relationships. But what we don't realize is that by constantly saying yes to everyone else, we are saying no to ourselves. We are saying no to our own needs, to our own emotional well-being, and to our own happiness. Boundaries are not about being rude or rejecting others. They are about making sure that you will lose yourself in the process of trying to meet others' expectations. When you set boundaries, you're saying to the world that you value yourself enough to protect your time, your emotions, and your peace of mind. People who don't respect your boundaries are people who don't understand your worth. They will test you, push against your limits, and try to make you feel guilty for saying no. But when you set clear boundaries and stand firm in them, you demonstrate a level of self-respect that forces others to either adjust their behavior or step away. People who truly value you will understand your boundaries and respect them. They will not push against them because they understand that your well-being is not negotiable. Setting boundaries is also an act of self-care. It's a way of protecting your emotional health from the toxicity of others. It's easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of other people's demands, expectations, and needs, and before you know it, you're running on empty. But by setting boundaries, you take control over how much you give to others and how much you reserve for yourself. You stop letting people drain your energy, and you start recognizing when you need to say no in order to preserve your own peace. Setting boundaries is not selfish, it's necessary. It's necessary for your own mental, emotional, and physical health. People who have difficulty setting boundaries often struggle with feelings of guilt. We've been conditioned to believe that saying no is selfish, that putting ourselves first is a sign of weakness or arrogance. But in reality, setting boundaries is an essential part of self-love. It's saying, I matter. My needs matter. It's not about being mean or inconsiderate. It's about recognizing that you can't be there for others if you're not first there for yourself. When you don't set boundaries, you end up resentful, overburdened, and burned out. You start to feel like you're giving too much and receiving too little. But when you set clear limits, you find that you have more energy to give, more emotional capacity to care for others, and more space to love yourself. It's also important to understand that setting boundaries isn't just about saying no. It's about clearly communicating what you need in order to feel respected and valued. Sometimes people don't even realize they are crossing your boundaries because you haven't expressed them. Boundaries are an invitation for others to understand how they can show up for you in a way that honors your needs. When you communicate your boundaries, you give others the opportunity to either rise to the occasion or fall away. The right people will always respect your boundaries because they see your value, and they want to be in your life in a way that is mutually respectful. The people who refuse to respect your boundaries will show you that they are not the kind of people you want in your life, because they are more interested in taking from you than in contributing to a healthy, balanced relationship. The key to setting boundaries is consistency. It's not enough to say no once and then let someone walk all over you again the next time they ask. You have to be firm in your commitment to yourself. It's easy to let things slide, to make exceptions, or to give in because you don't want to upset anyone. But each time you let someone cross your boundaries, you send a message that they don't need to respect your limits. If you want people to understand and respect your boundaries, you have to stand firm in enforcing them. Another aspect of setting boundaries is learning to recognize your limits. You have to be in tune with yourself enough to know when you've given enough, when you need rest, when you need space, and when you need to say no. Recognizing your limits is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. It's a recognition that you are human, that you have limitations, and that you are worthy of honoring those limitations. Your peace is more important than anyone else's expectations. Setting boundaries can be uncomfortable at first, especially if you've been accustomed to saying yes to everything for years. But once you start to practice it, you'll begin to see the benefits. You'll feel lighter, freer, and more in control of your life. You'll start to feel respected and valued in ways you never did before, and the relationships you have will become healthier, more fulfilling, and more balanced. People will know where they stand with you, and you'll no longer feel like you're constantly giving more than you're receiving. When you set boundaries, you create a life that reflects your true worth, not the expectations of others. And when you do that, you show the world that you value yourself enough to protect your time, your energy, and your peace. The people you allow into your life shape your experiences, your emotions, and your overall well-being. It's often said that you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and that couldn't be more true. The people who surround you either lift you up or weigh you down. They either add value to your life or drain you of your energy, and the key to protecting your peace and happiness lies in recognizing which relationships are nurturing and which ones are toxic. When someone doesn't value you, it's essential to step back and assess the impact that relationship has on your life. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to walk away from people who no longer serve your growth or your happiness. This doesn't mean that you have to cut everyone out of your life the moment they make a mistake or show signs of not appreciating you. Relationships are complex and people are flawed. We all go through tough times and sometimes treat others poorly without meaning to. But when you find yourself consistently drained by someone's behavior, when you feel like you're giving far more than you're receiving, or when you're constantly questioning your worth because of how someone treats you, it's time to take a step back and evaluate whether or not that person truly deserves to be in your life. You have to ask yourself, is this person adding value to my life, or are they just taken from me? Toxic relationships are insidious because they often begin subtly. You may not notice the signs at first, but over time, the impact of someone's behavior begins to wear you down. They might make you feel small, unimportant, or overlooked. They might take advantage of your kindness, your generosity, or your willingness to help. They might make you feel guilty for standing up for yourself or taking care of your own needs. In the beginning, you might excuse their behavior, brush it off, or try to justify it. But if this pattern continues, it can erode your sense of self-worth and leave you feeling emotionally drained. When you recognize that someone doesn't value you, it's a wake-up call. It's a sign that you need to reassess your boundaries and expectations in that relationship. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to let go of someone who isn't capable of valuing you in the way you deserve. This doesn't mean that you should hold a grudge or seek revenge. It simply means that you recognize that your value is not determined by anyone's ability to see it. You do not need to prove your worth to anyone. You are already worthy, whether someone else sees it or not. Letting go of someone who doesn't value you can be incredibly difficult. The bond you share with that person might have been strong at one point, or you might have invested a great deal of time and energy into the relationship. You might feel guilty for walking away or fearful of the consequences. But the truth is, staying in a relationship that doesn't nurture you only causes more harm in the long run. It keeps you stuck in a cycle of unfulfilling interactions, emotional exhaustion, and low self-esteem. You cannot continue to give to someone who doesn't recognize the value you bring to their life. It's like pouring water into a cup that has no bottom. It will never fill up. And when you stop pouring, you free yourself from the burden of trying to meet someone else's unappreciative expectations. Letting go doesn't mean that the person has no value. It just means that they are not the right fit for your life at this moment. You are allowed to prioritize your own well-being and choose relationships that nourish you, challenge you to grow, and bring out the best in you. You are allowed to let go of toxic people without guilt because you are choosing yourself. You are choosing your peace, your happiness, and your self-respect. The people who value you will show up. The ones who don't will fade away. And that's okay. Sometimes the hardest part is realizing that people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. If they cannot appreciate your worth, it is not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of where they are in their own lives. The process of letting go is not always easy. It may come with moments of doubt, fear, or sadness, but it is one of the most empowering things you can do for yourself. As you let go of those who don't value you, you create space for new relationships to form, relationships that are healthy, reciprocal, and built on mutual respect. You create space for people who will see you for who you truly are, who will appreciate you for your kindness, your strength, and your authenticity. These relationships will challenge you in ways that make you better. And they will build you up instead of breaking you down. When you stop allowing people who don't value you to occupy space in your life, you begin to understand your own worth on a deeper level. You realize that your happiness is not dependent on anyone else's approval. You begin to take responsibility for your own emotional well-being and choose to surround yourself with people who treat you with the love and respect you deserve. And as you let go of the people who no longer serve your growth, you make room for more love, more positivity, and more opportunities to thrive. The right people will always show up when you make the decision to stop settling for less. They will recognize your worth, appreciate your presence, and value your contributions to their lives. And when that happens, you'll know that you've made the right choice. Because the people who truly value you will lift you up, not drag you down. They will see you, they will understand you, and they will respect you. That's the power of walking away from those who don't value and makes room for the people who truly will. When you stop allowing others to treat you poorly, you begin to reclaim your power. For too long, many of us have accepted behavior from others that we didn't deserve: disrespect, dishonesty, disregard for our time, or taking advantage of our kindness. It's often subtle at first. A hurtful comment here, a broken promise there. But over time, the small things add up, and you find yourself in situations where you've been taken for granted or mistreated. The hard truth is, many people will treat you as you allow them to. They will push boundaries, cross lines, and disrespect your time and energy, not necessarily out of malice, but because they sense you haven't set the standard of how they should treat you. But when you finally reach the point where you refuse to tolerate poor treatment, something inside you shifts. You start to understand that your peace is priceless and no one is worth sacrificing it for. The first step in reclaiming your power is recognizing when you're being mistreated. It can be hard to admit that someone you care about or someone you've invested time and energy in is treating you poorly. We often make excuses for others. They didn't mean it. They've had a rough day, or it was just a misunderstanding. But the reality is, if the behavior continues, it's no longer a mistake, it's a pattern. And patterns can be very telling, whether it's emotional manipulation, taking you for granted, or using you for their own benefit. People who treat you poorly will keep doing it until you stop allowing them to. You have to stop being a willing participant in this cycle. The moment you stop tolerating mistreat, you send a clear message, not just to them, but to yourself, that you deserve better. And that's the most powerful message you can ever send. We've all been guilty of letting someone get away with poor treatment because we don't want to cause conflict. We're afraid of confrontation, or we don't feel we have the right to speak up. But when you don't speak up, you teach others that it's okay to treat you in ways that aren't fair. We often fear that standing up for ourselves will make us seem difficult, demanding, or confrontational. But in reality, it's the exact opposite. Setting boundaries and standing up for your self-respect is a sign of strength and not weakness. It's a sign of self-awareness, of knowing who you are and what you deserve. If you never speak up, the people around you will never know what's acceptable and what's not. And by not asserting your boundaries, you allow the mistreatment to continue. The truth is, no one is entitled to your time, your energy. Your people will take from you as much as you let them. And if you don't set clear boundaries, they'll keep crossing lines until there's nothing left to take. But once you stop allowing this, the shift in your life is profound. You begin to experience a newfound sense of freedom and empowerment. You realize that you have the ability to control who gets access to you and how they treat you. You have the right to decide who is worthy of your time, who is worthy of your heart, and who is worthy of your loyalty. When you stop allowing people to treat you poorly, you stop giving away pieces of yourself to those who don't deserve it. It's also important to recognize that standing up for yourself doesn't mean you have to be rude, aggressive, or mean-spirited. You don't have to meet disrespect with more disrespect. Standing up for yourself means asserting your needs calmly, confidently, and with conviction. It means saying no when something doesn't sit right with you. And it means walking away from situations or people who consistently make you feel less than you are. It's about having the courage to walk away, not because you want to hurt the other person, but because you value yourself too much to stay in a situation that compromises your well-being. The most powerful way to teach people how to treat you is to show them through your actions. When they see that you won't tolerate being treated poorly, they'll either rise to the occasion or fade away. And either way, you win. What's crucial to understand is that when you stop tolerating poor treatment, you make space for the people who truly respect you. The right people, those who understand your worth and value your presence, will never make you feel small or unimportant. They will support you, encourage you, and treat you with kindness and consideration. But you can only attract these kinds of people when you start treating yourself with the same respect that you expect from others. When you stop allowing people to take advantage of you, you send out a signal that you are someone who is worthy of respect, love, and care. And the people who are truly meant to be in your life will show up, recognizing that and treating you accordingly. One of the most significant shifts you'll experience when you stop tolerating poor treatment is that you'll begin to see yourself in a new light. The way people treat you is often a reflection of how you treat yourself. If you allow others to treat you poorly, it may be because you don't recognize your own worth. But when you start to hold yourself in higher regard, when you set the standard for how you expect to be treated, you'll find that your relationships improve. You'll stop attracting people who drain you or abuse your kindness, and you'll start attracting those who genuinely appreciate you. It's a ripple effect. By standing up for yourself, you not only protect your peace, but you also elevate the quality of your relationships. The more you practice not allowing others to treat you poorly, the more you'll realize that you are deserving of the best. You'll begin to walk with your head held higher, your heart stronger, and your mind at peace, knowing that you've taken control of your life. You will no longer be at the mercy of people who don't value, and you'll no longer allow them to dictate how you feel about yourself. You'll realize that the only approval you need is your own. And when you stop seeking approval from those who don't treat you right, you free yourself to receive the love, respect, and appreciation that you truly deserve. When you take back control of your life, something remarkable happens. You begin to realize that your happiness, your peace, and your sense of purpose were always within your grasp. Far too often, we give away our power without even realizing it. We allow others to dictate our emotions, define our worth, and control our decisions. We find ourselves trapped in cycles of trying to meet other people's expectations, seeking their approval, or holding on to relationships that drain us. But the truth is, you don't have to live like this. You don't have to hand over the reins of your life to anyone else. The moment you decide to take back control, you step into a version of yourself that is stronger, freer, and more authentic than ever before. Taking back control of your life starts with awareness. You have to recognize the ways in which you've been giving away your power. Maybe it's staying silent when you should speak up. Maybe it's saying yes when you really want to say no. Maybe it's clinging to people or situations that no longer serve you because you're afraid of the unknown. Or maybe it's allowing fear, doubt, or guilt to dictate your actions. Whatever it is, identifying these patterns is the first step to breaking free from them. You have to be honest with yourself about what's holding you back, even if it's uncomfortable to face. Growth requires honesty. And taking back control of your life means being willing to confront the things that have been keeping you stuck. One of the most empowering decisions you can make is to stop waiting for others to give you permission to live the life you want. Too often we wait for someone else to validate our dreams, our choices, or our worth. We seek approval from friends, family, or society, believing that we need their blessing to move forward. But here's the truth. You don't need anyone else's permission to be happy, to chase your dreams, or to prioritize your well-being. You have everything you need within you to create the life you deserve. When you stop waiting for external validation and start trusting yourself, you reclaim the power that you've been giving away. You stop letting others define your path and start walking confidently in the direction of your own choosing. Taking back control of your life also means taking responsibility for it. It's easy to fall into the trap of blaming others for your circumstances, your upbringing, your partner, your boss, or even life itself. But the moment you shift from blame to accountability, you realize that you have the power to change your situation. You may not be able to control everything that happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it. You can control your mindset, your choices, and your actions. Taking responsibility doesn't mean blaming yourself for things beyond your control. It means acknowledging that you have the power to shape your future, no matter what has happened in your past. Another crucial aspect of taking back control is setting boundaries. If you're constantly putting others' needs ahead of your own, you're allowing them to dictate your life. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They're about creating space for yourself to thrive. They're about protecting your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being. When you set boundaries, you're telling the world that you value yourself enough to prioritize your own needs. And when you enforce those boundaries, you teach others how to treat you. The right people will respect your boundaries because they respect you. The wrong people will fall away, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life, and letting go of those who don't honor your boundaries is an act of self-love. Taking back control of your life also requires you to confront your fears. Fear is one of the biggest obstacles to living a fulfilling life. It keeps you stuck in situations that no longer serve you because you're afraid of change, afraid of failure, or afraid of what others might think. But fear is only as powerful as you allow it to be. When you face your fears head on, you begin to see that they're not as insurmountable as they seemed. You start to realize that the only thing standing between you and the life you want is your willingness to take that first step. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's taking action in spite of it. And when you act with courage, you take back the power that fear once held over you. Part of reclaiming your life is also rediscovering your passions and priorities. It's easy to lose sight of what truly matters to you when you're caught up in the demands and expectations of others. But taking back control means reconnecting with yourself, your dreams, your values, and your purpose. It means asking yourself, what do I really want? What makes me feel alive? What kind of life do I want to create? And then it means taking intentional steps toward that vision. It might require difficult choices, sacrifices, or a shift in mindset, but every step you take in the direction of your true self is a step toward freedom. Ultimately, taking back control of your life is about choosing yourself. It's about deciding that you are worthy of living a life that feels authentic, joyful, and fulfilling. It's about recognizing that you don't have to settle for less than you deserve. You have the power to rewrite your story, to break free from the limitations others have placed on you, and to create a life that reflects who you truly are. The process isn't always easy, and it may take time, but every small step you take toward reclaiming your power is a step toward a brighter, more empowered future.